If I could go back in time and change one thing, it would be that in the 1960s, when there was the formation of the OAU, that we went in direction of Kwame Nkrumah and Julius Nyerere and Thomas Sankara, of finding a way to anywhere that I've traveled to on the African continent, I automatically can feel and see the sense of community, which I think Steve Biko said, the most potent weapon in the hand of the oppressed is the mind of the oppressed.
We always be saying that, can African be one? How best do you think? Because right now you're moving from one African country to one African. Do you think African can be one? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I go by the name Me, Myself, and I. Epic it was. Remember to like and share to this amazing video. Today I'm here with this amazing, beautiful lady.
My name is Esther Watsanai, Mano, and I'm from Zimbabwe.
Wow.
Yeah, and so currently I'm on a research fellowship called the Watson, and it's 12 months of independent research, and I dedicated my research to looking at community efforts at decolonizing African education.
Wow.
So I'm about two-thirds of my way through the research, and yeah, it's been amazing just traveling throughout the continent and witnessing amazing programs happening that are uplifting African youth through education. Yeah.
Wow. So how has it been so far for you?
It's been honestly extraordinary.
Wow.
Yeah. I think, when I started the research, I didn't know how much I would find and how much was happening on the continent. After studying in the US for my undergrad, I was unaware, I would say, of how much grassroots efforts they are in radically reimagining African education. So I think I was in East Africa for 6 months, and now...
You've been to East Africa?
Yeah. So I was in Kenya, Rwanda, and Tanzania, and now Ghana, and I spent a bit of time in Liberia, and then I'll go on to Southern Africa, where I'll be in South Africa and Eswatini, and then Cameroon, Barbados, and then my research is over. So just trying to cover most regions of the continent. Unfortunately, I won't get to go to North Africa or like really deeply explore Central Africa, but yeah.
All right, so in terms of all the research and all the African countries that you've been, right now you are in Ghana. Can you tell us a little bit about each African countries that you've been and some of the important things that are very common in various African countries that you've been?
Yeah, I think every country on the continent is uniquely itself.
In Africa?
Yeah, of course. I think obviously in every country there's so much diversity in culture and traditions, language and everything, but I think there's also a lot of similarities all over the continent that we don't talk about as much as the diversity. Like I would say there's the inherent African values, which I see in... I haven't been to that many African countries. I think 6.
You've been to 6. Someone I've been to.
Okay, true. But so speaking from my experiences of those 6, and Zimbabwe, I guess, or 7, I would say the inherent African values really shine through.
Wow.
Meaning like community, I think is the biggest one. Anywhere that I've traveled to on the African continent, I automatically can feel and see the sense of community, which I think you don't see everywhere else in the world, and I think it's something that we should be proud of. There wasn't that many difficulties because of this inherent value of community.
Okay.
You know, when I arrive in a country, it's so easy to, if you ask someone, where can I get food? How do I get here? People are always willing to help you. Do you know what I mean? And they're even willing to stay in contact with you and stay friends with you and communicate with you throughout my time there. But I would say something that just like amazed me that I don't think you see outside of the continent as much is how easy it was to form like connections with NGOs or schools or universities. If I went to one school or one NGO, they would direct me to like another 5.
Wow.
Or a person that they think is influential or will help me. And I think that has been truly amazing. I never would have thought I would have made the connections or met the people that I've met just from talking to people, and people want to help. And it just gives me so much hope to see that there is a community that's trying to transform the continent through education. And yeah, it's amazing.
It's amazing. It's amazing to be amazing and to be on the continent of Africa. We always be saying that, can African be one? How best do you think? Because right now you moving from one African country to one African. Do you think African can be united? Do you think African can be one?
Yeah, good question. Challenging question. I would say, if I could go back in time and change one thing, it would be that in the 1960s, when there was the formation of the OAU, that we went in direction of Kwame Nkrumah and Julius Nyerere and Thomas Sankara of finding a way to unite Africa in the United States of Africa, because we are all fighting the same fight, I would say, as Africa. Like, we all have individual battles happening in our country, but we all still have like a common enemy, we can say, which is like the enemy of neocolonialism and neo-imperialism, coming from both the West and the East now. So I would say that I really, really hope and wish that Africa unites. And I think for Africa to transform, either like in the independent countries that we see today, or on a continental level, for us to transform through a way that's going to uplift ourselves with dignity and the respect that we deserve, we have to unite, and we have to do it our way. And I can't say like, oh, I know how it's going to work, and like how like the systems of government or like the currency and all those little big details will fall in place. It's not like my specialty, but I do think that to a certain extent, to a great extent, Africa does really need to unite. We need to take advantage of the AU. We need to create communal systems, like the system of education, that can make things easier for the continent. We need to help each other develop instead of relying on the West to help us develop individually. So honestly, like, it is like my biggest wish is to see the transformation of the continent through a sense of unity. Yeah.
So according to your research, what are some of the things that you think you can bring up to help the continent of Africa? Because you are right now doing a research on African, basically, right?
Okay. Yeah. As Steve Biko said, the most potent weapon in the hand of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. And that's what needs to change on the continent. The mindset that we have as Africans, that we adopted through colonialism. We need to mentally emancipate our minds to be able to view ourselves and our continent with the dignity that it deserves. So for me, I think the best way, or the most effective way of transformation, will come through education. Right? Nelson Mandela said education is the greatest, most powerful weapon, right? Something like that. And I agree with that, right? I think an education system shapes the society that you want. And Africa has never had the chance to create their own education system, right? If we really think about it. This formal education that we see today came through colonization. And those systems of education, when they came originally, were made to change the mindset of Africans, right? If you think about it, colonization, they had to change a mindset of a large group of people to believe that they were inferior to a subgroup of people, right? To believe that like white people were were superior, right? Yeah. So they did that through missionary work and through education. And if we've never radically reimagined that education system, aren't we just uplifting these Eurocentric norms and values in our society today, right? Even though, like, yes, when we got independence, we have our own national exams and we have our own curriculums, but they're all based off of, ex-colonies. Okay. So our ex-colonies education system, right? Yeah. So I believe that we really need to start radically rethinking our curriculums as a whole and our education system as a whole. Because if we have an education that uplifts our history and our cultures and our diversity and our language, what will that do to the mind of like the youth, right? And how will that create a holistic identity that you're proud of in being African? If we have this curriculum and this education that's so rooted in Afrocentricity, how will that change people on an individual level, but also on a societal level, right? If instead of in your geography textbook, all your case studies are about places you've never seen before, right? What would happen if they were about case studies that were relevant to the continent, right? Now, when you're thinking of the problems that you want to solve in your ideal career, right? You're thinking about it in the context of the continent or in the context of your community, right? Which is hard to do when we're teaching kids from textbooks that have examples of Ireland and New Zealand, and then we're like, okay, but what problems do you want to fix on the continent? They have no idea because they're not learning about it in school, right? So I would say, I believe that the biggest problem right now on the continent is the mindset. And if the mindset can change, then I think Africa can change.